Hello, everybody. I am really excited to have Alex from Findr join us today, and we're going to be walking through a bit of a customer interview. And Alex, I just want to first give you a chance to say, who are you, what's your company, and what's it all about?
Hello, everyone. I'm Alex. I was a photographer and picture editor for 15 years, straight out of college. I worked at the Scotsman and I worked as a freelance photographer for a lot of commercial and editorial clients. I've had a pretty good reputation. In 2013, I took voluntary redundancy from the Scotsman amidst massive redundancies over and over again. And I decided to throw everything into making the world of photography and specifically booking photographers better for everyone. So we created a technology first platform which connects any user with the perfect photographer for their project or needs. We've got some really good success in helping large companies, international companies, organize and manage their photography requirements up to 1,000 shoots a month in some cases, right across the world. That is helping us get to the next phase, which is to build out the marketplace, which allows photographers to be in control of their work and profile, which then allows us to generate more single customers. We're about making sure that people connect with the right photographer for their project really quickly and really efficiently.
Right, that makes sense. And just for the benefit of our viewers who didn't catch our pre-recording discussion, where's your head at the moment? You had a really interesting description of just what's going on.
We've got some really nice early successes. It's one of those cases where a lot of people will be like, hey, what's this Findr thing? It seems like a big success. We've been working on it really hard for 5 years now. We've had lots and lots of ups and downs with the company, but we seem to be heading in the right direction, and having clients like Deliveroo on board and other international clients has really helped us sort of start to create a solid base. We've got just under 4,500 photographers in 65 countries who are part of our network, and we're a photographer first company using technology to make their lives easier and to make their marketing, promotion and business relationships easier.
So how would you describe Findr at the moment as a company? You're talking about it progressing to a marketplace. Where does it sit just now?
So we've always been really transparent about what we're doing. There's a lot of companies in photography who are sharks in, there's no better description, and they would take commission from shoots, and often the price of photography for the customer is really important, and it gets pushed further and further down. And so we wanted to change that, and we wanted to make sure that the photographer is getting the full fee for any opportunity that they get. So we created a marketplace which allows the different ways of working to be, there are different models of working to all flow through it. So we have contract customers who are the managed clients. We have a marketplace where you can search for, contact, communicate with and book photographers directly. And we then have a tender process where people can post their requirements and our photographers can then get back to them. When we, especially with the managed clients, we recruit photographers on a need-only basis. So instead of saying, we are open and we always invite new photographers to join, but we recruit extensively when we have a need in specific places. So we're really active at the moment right across the UK, but also in France, Spain, Italy. We're starting to grow in America, which is really exciting and a massive opportunity for us, but it's a lot of work and we're still a really small team.
Right, and so building on that, in terms of your small team and enabling them to actually support that kind of vast growing customer base, what kind of SaaS products do you use company-wide that you pay for to help them do their roles?
I'm really, really Scottish in my outlook, and as a founder, also a founder who's experienced the roller coaster of what it is to be a startup, I am really, really budget conscious when it comes to the company. So we were a team of 6 in summer last year, but we lost a really big contract that we were a bit overexposed to. Fortunately, they've now come back because they realized that we did it better. So it's now just me and one developer. So I pay for GitHub, I pay for MailChimp, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So beyond that, I use a lot of products on the free sort of tier. So we use Slack, and we're really lucky in that we registered, because of another company I have, we registered with Gmail apps really, really early. So we're still on the legacy version of Gmail, and we get 100 users for 2 companies, 100 users each, and we don't have to pay at all. And I know other companies are paying £3 per users. So, in a way, we are really fortunate with that. And some of the software with Google Apps especially is restricted, but it's enough for us to help us do what we need to do and also control costs.
Yeah, so I can definitely hear that those kind of price points are really important to you. So moving on to your personal productivity, are there any SaaS products that you do include and you pay for personally?
Yeah, so the one that I kind of realized that I needed or wanted to use really early on was Microsoft Office. I was using OpenOffice, which was okay, but I think the simplicity and the productivity that I was getting out of OpenOffice just wasn't quite hitting the mark. And so I paid for Microsoft Office. And then as a photographer, I've always paid for Adobe Creative Suite. And I also pay for a product called Photo Mechanic, which is editing and captioning software.
All right, that's great, thanks. Okay, so to pick apart, you talked about kind of scaling your team and then cutting the team back in relation to what contracts you have in. What has your funding journey looked like so far? How has that been made up to date?
Chaos is probably the word. So I invested a lot of my redundancy money into the prototype, which we built in collaboration with the digital agency Primate in Edinburgh. Built a really, really good prototype, which then I went out to the investor market to try and fund. It took us 18 months to get that first fundraise over the line. And ultimately we raised only a third of what we needed, or what we thought we needed. We then got really lucky, and we won an Innovate UK grant, which was almost written for Findr. It was digital creative media in Edinburgh. That was held in collaboration with Codebase, which we then joined Codebase and have become a part of the furniture here in a way. We then, with the growth of the company, we launched our product in March 2017, and that was the first iteration of the marketplace over the agency map.
And angel investors, those early investors?
Yeah, so that was a company or an investor syndicate called Apollo Informal Investments, and they invest typically up to 150,000. A great guy called Mikhail Smith is their gatekeeper, and he then became a part of our team going forwards from there. So really helped us to kind of find our feet. And I had never built what I envisaged as a global company before. I have run companies, and I'm always diligent, and I've got a managerial outlook, but growing a company was a brand new experience, and so there was a lot of naivety in my outlook. Yeah. We pitched at EIE 2018 with a view to raising a sort of seed round to set us up for a Series A. And we were going to close a round of 350,000, but then 3 days before we closed it, we lost that big contract, and most of the investors, or most of the money, pulled out. And we ended up closing a round with just a few individuals and some people from Apollo who wanted to follow on. Right. And that gave us enough money to get through a few months, and those few months was enough for us to recuperate from the loss of that contract and build up new clients. And then, ironically enough, as we got towards the end of that money, the client who had left us in the first place then came back.
Right. So how much have you raised then in total to date?
So in total to date, we've raised just shy of 75,000 in angel investment, and just shy of 100,000 in grant.
Yeah, and so what does that shareholder number look like then for you now?
So we've got 14 shareholders. of those 14, 8 of them are connected to Apollo. And then the rest are friends and family.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so thinking of those shareholders, how do you go about, do you update them? Do you tell them what's going on with Findr?
Our investor network's really, really important to us. And, you know, especially given the trials and tribulations we've had with it, we find it really valuable to stay in close contact with them. You know, there's a reason that they've invested in Findr. And it's whether it's a belief in me or a belief in what we're doing, we feel it's our responsibility to keep them up to date. So we try to send them a monthly email, which is written in large part from the update I create for our monthly board meetings.
Right.
And we're really diligent about the board meetings. Unfortunately, I do sometimes kind of forget to send out the investor update, and then but then I'll do a bi-monthly one instead and say, I'm so sorry, I ran out of time last month.
Yeah. So talk me through that. If your investor network are important to you and updating them kind of is triggered, I'm hearing, by normally the board meeting coming up.
Yeah.
How does that process look? And I guess part of that is the board meeting process. How do you go about creating the content for that email and sending it?
So what we do is we try to make sure that we're looking at what our goals and ambitions are. As I mentioned earlier on, we want to build the preeminent marketplace for professional photographers. So whenever anyone thinks of a need for a photographer, they think of Findr. Whenever a photographer thinks about marketing and promoting themselves, whether they're at the start of their business or near the end of their business, or they've come into photography from a different career, we want to give them that place. And so having that global outlook kind of underlines everything we do. So what we try and give them is a sense of the wins we've had in any given month, the challenges we've had in any given month, what our financial metrics look like at a high level, where we would really benefit from their help and input, and then finally where we are with all of our, almost like an appendix, but where we are with all of our customer journeys.
And what does that look like when you put that together? So when you say your wins and your challenges, or you're saying this is an area you can help with, what does that look like?
So typically it's maybe 3 pages that we try and put together, and it's laid out very much like a sort of traditional document. So we'll start with the wins, we'll follow up with the challenges on page 1, and then we'll go into what the current team outlook is like, what we're working on in terms of technology. You know, the technology underpins everything that we do, and essentially we're a SaaS platform for large companies, and that's where we're finding our success, even before the marketplace is fully active. And it's about allowing our investors to see where their connections can be really useful, and where their input can be really useful. So, for example, one of the things that we've been working on recently is improving our KPIs. So we've got a really good sense of our metrics in terms of how many photographers we've got, how many bookings we're doing each month, but how can we improve them, and how can they indicate what our performance is like? And the photographer numbers, the number of photographers who have applied versus the number of photographers who are approved is one of the metrics that we're getting to. But our investors are vocal about that, and they help us to kind of try and line up where we want to be with where we are now. And we think that's especially important because we're a small team, and essentially I'm driving the company forwards, but we're only human, and our time is always limited.
Right. And so I'm hearing those kind of the North Star metrics and the KPI measurement is something that you do in tandem with that investor network.
Yeah, very, very much so. Some months we won't hear anything back from them at all, but other months someone will reach out and say, let's go for a coffee. I've got some really good ideas about this, and I've seen this in action. We're really looking forward to we're fundraising again at the moment, and looking for something north of $500,000 in order to help us really start to accelerate the business. And we're really looking forward to starting to work with investors who have the same global outlook that our current investors do, but maybe have more experience in global markets and positioning and in growing, scaling companies as well.
Yeah, so when you think about that investor network that you have as a whole, so all your shareholders and your investors, how engaged do you say they are? How do you feel about their engagement?
I think you would always like them to be more engaged, and it's always kind of the same people who are vocal in some ways. But you know, as long as we feel that as long as we're keeping people up to date, then there's not a huge amount more we can do. We don't want to harass them into helping us. You know, they've got their own lives and they're their own people, and because they're all private investors, you know, they're not hounding us in order to kind of achieve results. But in some ways, you kind of wish they were, because it would be useful to kind of hear it from their perspective. And you know, then I really like challenging conversations.
Yeah.
You know, I actually, dealing with the day-to-day stuff when it's kind of easy and you're just going through the motions, as much of that I try and automate. And what I try and do is focus on the challenging conversations, that because I think you learn so much more from those challenges.
So when you're looking to or needing to have one of those difficult conversations, you've got a challenge that you just need to lean into, pick apart, have somebody who's got your best interests at heart, but is also a super critical, cynical person, which can be really useful. How many of your investors, or what proportion do you think, if I had something that I needed to take to them, this is the portion who would come back to me and give me that time?
We're probably at about a third of people. So there are 3 of our investors who are actively involved with the company as well. Mikkel obviously is one of them. But then one of them has also been, when we were a little bit larger last year, was our chief of operations. One is an individual who I share our office with, but he's a CTO in his own right. And so all of them are involved on a day-to-day basis. But then beyond that, there's also you know, another quarter of the investors who will always have something to say. Unfortunately, 2 of our investors have passed away, and hopefully nothing to do with us, you know, not the stress of Findr getting to them too much. But so it means then that we've got a responsibility to their estate, but they're no longer actively involved.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what do you like about the process that you currently have about updating those investors? What works well for you?
What I like is the diligence of it. So I feel, you know, we're on the 13th of March now, and I should have sent out the update to the investors on the 1st of March. No, it's fine. I was very aware of it. We've just had an absolutely massive fortnight, and we hadn't had the chance to scale the team in order to cope with that fortnight. It's kind of been thrust upon us. Yeah. And so it's the things like that which kind of get set to one side. But I think that the diligence is, on a month-by-month basis, is really good. What I would like a little bit more feedback from them in terms of making the improvements. But maybe it's the format in which we share it with them, or maybe it's the format in which they can get back to us. And, you know, I think there is a sort of attitude amongst them of let them get on with it. They know what they're doing. Yeah. But the tiniest thing can spur you on and it kind of give you that kind of motivation to do something or improve something. And tiny iterative improvements are our lifeline, because it's what we do on a daily basis.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what do you think when you're kind of putting together that information, especially, I guess, the metric side of it? You said, you know, I don't know if they necessarily, is it the format of the information? Do they see that snapshot in isolation? Do they see a comparison? Like, what do you give them to kind of work off from that?
So what we do every month is we do a comparison for the metrics. So what it was like the previous 2 or 3 months in some cases. We do also see all of our photographers as shareholders of a type. we're not a community company at the moment, but you know, it's maybe something that we would look at in the future. But their feedback is absolutely massive to us, because at the end of the day, the product is theirs to make the most of. The customer journey for us, and this is the people who are needing and booking photographers, is very much kind of dictated by how engaged photographers are. And with the photographers coming back to us with lots and lots of information, and you know, with 4,500 of them, you do get lots and lots of information. Not all good, but on the most part, it's things that we listen to, and that helps to kind of inform our roadmap. Yeah. But I think in the same way from our private investors, it would be useful for them to kind of challenge what our model is and challenge what our thinking is. And I think that's an area that we could maybe look at creating a pipeline that gives them the ability to actually send that information back to us really easily.
So just to finally wrap up, and you touched upon it there, what other different groups do you have who you do want that kind of, I'm giving you information and there's a way to engage back? So I guess what other shareholders or stakeholders, and they might not necessarily be current investors you're currently raising, there might be people that you're keeping warm. Hey, I'm just updating you again so that you know what's happening at Findr.
Yeah.
Other groups of people like that.
So like I said, you know, for the most part, the product is informed by photographer needs and photographer feedback. But we also, the size we're at, we're lucky that we can still offer every single customer that white glove treatment. Some engage with it and some completely ignore it. If we had, like, there's products like Intercom and things like that that we could use, but again, I'm Scottish and I'm running a business, so you know, we try and control our costs, and it's the kind of, when does the productivity meet the financial drain on our company? You know, basically when we, with our experiences last year, we just tried to reduce our monthly burn rate to as little as possible. Yeah. And you know, to the point where I wasn't taking a salary for some months, and we did fortunately get back to the point where it could pay me for two full-time jobs every week. But I think formalizing those processes is really helpful, and I'm aware that, you know, there's productivity tools out there that we would really benefit from and that would give us a framework, but it's kind of finding them and engaging with them as we get to them. Yeah.
Thank you. That really makes sense. So is there a way that you'd like to share for people to find out more about Findr or yourself and your journey or your current investment round?
I think just, you know, if you're interested in Findr, then reach out, get in touch. I love talking to people and hearing from people. And I love, more than anything, creating connections between amazing photographers and amazing individuals or businesses. You know, the guys that we work with create amazing work, and giving them work really fills us full of pleasure. And I think that that's passed on to the customer, and every customer who comes to work with us gets that sense that we're doing something to the best of our abilities in order to help make sure that their project is a success. And, you know, a lot of people will work with photographers already, and they will have their own ideas about who should be used for photographers. We are an open network, and we've deliberately made it open so that people can bring their own photographers to the table and work with them in a better managed process, but also to grow together as a community. And, you know, I'm here and I'm available, so get in touch if you're interested.
I love that. So thank you so much for giving us your time for a customer interview for the Zero to Revenue Challenge. It's been great having you, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Lizzie. Thanks for your time.